you some news that's right hot off the presses. You know, the first Friday of the month is Numbers Day. That's when we report the jobs numbers. And this morning, we had another solid month. 211,000 jobs created. Last month, we had almost 300,000 jobs created. And you know what? You know what? We are on pace so that this year will be the second consecutive year where we have seen job growth of more than 200,000 jobs a month in 2 years in a row. And folks, you know when the last time that happened? Bill Clinton, you got it, baby. Bill Clinton. You know what? Look at the numbers. If you want to create jobs in this country, one thing is clear. Elect a Democrat president of the United States. And that brings me to the second reason why I'm excited to be here. Because you know what? It has been an unmitigated privilege for me over the last 6 years to work for President Obama. And I want to say thank you to all of you who helped get him elected. He inherited a mess. We were in the deepest ditch of our lifetime economically, and we've climbed out, and we're on the ladder. We're on that road of opportunity once again. But we have undeniable unfinished business. Too many people aren't feeling the recovery. Too many people are working a 50-hour job and getting their food at the food pantry. And that is why we need to continue our progress, address the unfinished business. And the reason I'm so excited to be here is because I want to introduce you to the next President of the United States, Hillary Clinton. You know, I'm a proud progressive Democrat. And I'll tell you why I'm proud to introduce you to the next President of the United States. And that's because she is a fighter. She's fighting for you. She's smart enough to get elected, smart enough and tough enough to govern effectively, and her North Star is the middle class. Her North Star is working families. Her North Star are those kitchen table issues that keep people up across this country every night. Fighting for good jobs, fighting for fair wages, fighting to make sure that women have an opportunity to succeed, fighting to make sure that everybody who works hard and plays by the rules can succeed. That's why I'm here today. You know, and if it sounds like I got a little passion, it's because I do, okay? And I get even more passion when I'm in a union hall. Because, you know what? I'll tell you something. I grew up in a union town, Buffalo, New York. I'm Buffalo-Minican. That's what I am. Grew up in Buffalo, born in Buffalo, proudly raised in Buffalo. My parents came there from the Dominican Republic because the weather was the same. And so, you know what? I've seen the ups and downs of Buffalo. I was 12 when my dad died. My mom got sick. She was hospitalized shortly thereafter. But you know what? She was a fighter just like Secretary Clinton. And she willed herself to live another 30 years so she could raise my 4 siblings and me. And they taught us to work hard, play by the rules, get educated, and always make sure the ladder's down for everyone. And my best friend's father was my surrogate father. He was a Teamster. He taught me the importance of the union movement. When we all succeed, we all succeed. That's what he taught me. And that's why I bring those Buffalo values to bear every single day in my job. I was so proud to get Pell Grants. I was so proud to work any job I could to get through college, whether it was a trash collector, working at Sears, picking up golf balls, doing whatever I could to get through. And my mom was a strong woman. She taught me to fight and work hard and always make sure that you're helping others. And I couldn't imagine back then that I would have the privilege of standing up here today with you. And I have lived every day with with a sense of urgency, because that's what my parents taught me, to live with the fierce urgency of now, the need to help others. And you know what? That's what I've had the privilege of doing in the last 6 years, because under President Obama's leadership, we took on predatory lenders who transformed the American dream into the American nightmare. You know what? We went toe-to-toe with states like Texas who want to turn back the clock on voting rights. We went toe-to-toe with rogue sheriffs like Joe Arpaio who want to immigrant bait and immigrant bash. We helped marriage equality become a reality in this country. And frankly, my nomination for Labor Secretary got delayed because Republicans issued an indictment against me. They said I was a progressive Democrat. They were mad because I stood up for unions. They were mad because I stood up for vulnerable communities. They were mad because I was fighting for an increase in the minimum wage. And you know what? I won the contest among our cabinet secretaries for having the most op-eds written against me by the Wall Street Journal editorial page. You know what? And again, the charges were, I'm a progressive Democrat, and I will acknowledge to you, I plead guilty to those charges. And you know what? It takes one to know one. And you know what, folks? I'm working for a progressive Democrat, and I'm standing right next to a progressive Democrat. And you know what? I want to give you a few things that you may not know about the next president of the United States. Because I'm a firm believer that you get a window into somebody's moral compass when you look at what they were doing long before the spotlight came onto them. You know, Secretary Clinton graduated from Yale Law School. I had the privilege of going to Harvard University for law school. And you know, most of my colleagues, when they left, they went on to those big white shoe jobs on Wall Street making a ton of money. And you know what? I didn't do that, and nor did she. You know what she did? She went out there working for vulnerable people. We were just chatting a few weeks ago. I forgot exactly when. And we were talking about the struggles of working people. That's what our conversations invariably lead to every single time. How can we help all of you and everyone else who's struggling? We started talking about farm workers. And I was talking to her about the frustrations I feel every single day because there's not enough protections for farm workers. And unbeknownst to me, at the end, after dutifully listening to me, she explained the work she did as a young lawyer advocating for farm workers. I didn't know that. A window into her soul, a window into her moral compass. Her work on behalf of children is second to none. When I was a local elected official, I enforced one of the most important laws for young children with disabilities, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. And you know what? I had no idea that when she was graduated from law school, she went out there knocking on doors to prepare a report asking the question, why is it that so many millions of our children aren't getting access to education? And that work that she did led to the passage of that law, a window into her moral compass. You see so many examples of that in the work that she does. I used to direct the legal clinics at the Maryland Law School. And you know, we teach young lawyers how to be good lawyers, how to be responsible lawyers, and how to make sure they understand their duty to represent the underserved. I had no idea that Secretary Clinton did the same thing at the University of Arkansas Law School, helping indigent students who needed a hand, a window into her moral compass. And you know what? I worked for one of the most remarkable progressives in the history of the progressive movement, Ted Kennedy. And you know what? Ted Kennedy taught me what it was like to be a progressive, because what Ted Kennedy said was that, you know what? You can be passionate, but to be effective, you have to understand that idealism and pragmatism are not mutually exclusive. Hillary Clinton is a progressive who gets things done. Hillary Clinton understands what Ted Kennedy understood. When I worked for him in '96, he fought with President Clinton to get an increase in the minimum wage, and they got the bill passed over the objections of Newt Gingrich. But you know what? It wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't everything they wanted, but you know what? They understood. You bank what you get now, and you finish that, and what you do the next day is you go right back to work, fighting for people. That's what she does. That's what she did that brought us the state children's health insurance program, one of the most remarkable programs that's helping 80,000 Iowa children. These are children of working parents. I'm confident that if Secretary Clinton had her way back then, she would have written a more expansive bill that would have covered more people. But you know what? Idealism and pragmatism are not mutually exclusive. Principled compromise in this country is not a dirty word. Principled compromise brought us the Constitution in this country, and she moved the ball forward for children. And you know, I'll tell you one more story, because I've had the privilege in this job of doing a fair amount of international travel, and I have a lot of friends who work at the State Department. And when I travel, I'm always in awe of the dedicated career professionals who work around the world to represent our nation. And I've had many conversations with friends, and I say, you know, tell me about your experiences. I started out in the government as a career civil servant. The career people in federal service, the career people in state and local government, our AFSCME brothers and sisters, our SEIU brothers and sisters, other people working in local government, you are the spine of those agencies. And what I hear, I'd say, tell me about who your favorite secretaries were. And you know, they would talk about a distinguished number of folks. You know, I heard Colin Powell's name mentioned with frequency. And then we would get to Hillary Clinton, and you'd see the smile. You'd see the reverence, and you'd hear the following words: tireless, smart. And the word I heard the most was a good listener. Leaders listen, and leaders respect folks. I heard someone who said to me, you know what? She treats the contractor who cleans the floors in the State Department with the same respect that she treats a head of state visiting the State Department. That's someone whose mother brought her up well. Those are the things that I see, my friends. I see those things every single day. And she understands that the most important word in a democracy is we. We all succeed only when we all succeed. And right now, we've got unfinished business. She understands that when women succeed, America succeeds, and she'll never give up the fight for pay equity. She understands that when unions succeed, America succeeds because the middle class succeeds. She understands that the most important family value is the value of time that you spend with your family. But it's hard to spend time if you're working 2 or 3 jobs. It's hard to spend time if you've got to put your sick kid on the school bus because you don't have paid leave. She understands these challenges. And that's why I'm so excited to be here, folks. And I want to leave you with one more thing that I've learned about the progressive movement. The progressive movement is also about making history. I'm married to a very strong woman, 28 years. She works with homeless people. She's been doing that her whole career. I got a 19 and a 17-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old boy. And I have said to my daughters repeatedly, you know what, guys? Guys is gender neutral. You can do anything you want. You can aspire to any job that you want. Any job. And my one daughter says, any? And I say, any. And she says, you know what, Tom, or Dad? My middle kid calls me Tom. My oldest kid calls me Dad. And they say to me, well, you know, we've had 44 presidents, all men. And I say, you know what, guys? Gender neutral. It's time to make history again. In 2008, we made history, thanks to Iowa. In 2016, we're going to make history. And that's why I have founded the FDH movement. What's the FDH movement, you might ask? Fathers of Daughters for Hillary, okay? That's what I want. And I need your help, okay? I need you to do one thing for me. I need you to get involved in this campaign and take out your phone and go to and dial 47246, 47246, and type in GO, because that's how you will get involved in this campaign. That's how you will make history. 47246 and type in GO. And you will go toward making history by electing Secretary Hillary Clinton, the next President of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Clinton.
Oh man, I don't know about you, but I am all fired up. I'll tell you what, I think you just got a small dose of why those of us who know this man and have seen him as our Secretary of Labor are so enthusiastic about him and what he's doing and what he stands for. And I could not be more honored or really personally happier than to have him here with me in Sioux City, here at the North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters building, and with so many of you. I am thrilled. I'm going to have something more to say about Tom in a minute, but I want to thank Ernie Colt, business rep for Sioux City Carpenters Local 948. I want to thank Kevin Hilton, political director of the North Central States Regional Council. I want to thank your state representative, Chris Hall. Where's Chris? Right there. Thank you, Chris. Stand up. Yay. Thank you, Chris. I am so thrilled to have Chris's endorsement. Can't wait to work with you. Can't wait to be your partner. And I have to say thanks to everybody here in Sioux City who's sending such a young, dynamic Democrat to represent you in the state legislature. Now, I know in addition to a bunch of carpenters here, both current and retired, we got some laborers here as well. We have a bunch of other unions represented, and I am very proud to have the support of so many of you who do the building and the making of what we so value in our country. It's really important to me to have this chance to come here to talk to you about what I think we should be doing to invest a lot more money in building up our country. That's why I rolled out my infrastructure plan last Sunday in Boston at a rally that was titled Hard Hats for Hillary. Now, I've met some people who are hard heads for Hillary. Oh, I see some Ask Me people here too. Yeah, okay, thank you. But I'm proud to have hard hats for Hillary because I so admire and respect the work that you all do. We had an amazing rally. Terry O'Sullivan was there to introduce me. He's like Tom, he gives a stem winder. Doug McCarron was there to cheer me on. We had a great representation. And the reason we were all in Boston, 1,000 strong, was to send a clear message that we're going to create more good-paying jobs for hardworking Americans. As Tom just told you, we're making progress, but we haven't gone as far as we need to. Now, before I get into the details of all of that, I want to say a few words about the ongoing situation in San Bernardino, California. We're learning more, literally by the hour. There certainly is much more support for the view that this was a terrorist act. I have a great deal of confidence in law enforcement, local, state, federal, and I am convinced that they will do everything they can to run down every lead, no matter where it might take them anywhere in the world. We will learn more about these people, these murderers, and we will do everything in our power to make sure we prevent acts like this from happening. Now, I know how important it is to protect our country. I was, as some of you know, a senator from New York on 9/11. And I spent a great deal of my time as Secretary of State, but then before that as a senator, working with people who shared my commitment to protect us and prevent attacks. And we have to be vigilant, and we have to be cooperative, not only within our own country, so we share information with one another, but also do a better job of collecting and analyzing information from around the world. I've said repeatedly we need to redouble our efforts to dismantle the global structure of terrorism. We have to go after those folks who are on the internet radicalizing people. And we have to fight these terrorist networks in the air. The United States has to lead that. We're getting more help. The French, the Brits, and others. Germans just voted to help us. We have to fight them on the ground. That has to be the people who are there, not American troops. We can enable them and empower them, but we're not sending our troops there. And we have to fight them online. This is the first time we have faced an adversary so sophisticated about using the internet, using it to recruit vulnerable people, using it even to train, provide information about planning for attacks. So we've got to have a strategy to defeat these global terror networks. Now, part of that strategy, I'm just going to say this again, I've been talking about it for the last few days, is to try to prevent terrorists from getting their hands on guns in our country. Now, last night, the Senate voted down a law to block suspected terrorists from buying guns. We have thousands of people on a no-fly list. They get put on there based on credible information and suspicion that they should not be let on a plane inside our country or coming into our country. The bill was to prevent anybody on the no-fly list from buying a gun. I got to tell you, if you're too dangerous to fly in America, you are too dangerous to buy a gun in America, in my opinion. So there are a number of steps we have to take, and we're going to have to be really focused on going after anybody who poses a threat to us, no matter how they get here. And I know there's a big argument going on in the country about refugees. Look, we have to be careful. I understand the legitimate fears and concerns people have. We have to have the toughest possible vetting that our Defense Department, our intelligence community, Homeland Security, the State Department, everybody has to be as careful as we can. And it does take up to 2 years. I want to remind you, the people who flew those planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon were not refugees. They were here legally. They flew in on visas. Now, they overstayed their visas, but they got here legally. So we're going to have to take a much broader look. And we also don't want to do anything that undermines law enforcement's capacity to get the information we need. We've had Syrians, for example, come into this country a really long time. Some of you probably know that one of the oldest mosques in America is in Cedar Rapids. One of the oldest Syrian Orthodox churches in America is in Cedar Rapids. So we've got to proceed with caution, but we also have to keep moving forward in concert with our values. And it's important. It's important to do what works and not argue about what won't work. There's too much arguing going on. I want us to roll up our sleeves and protect us and support law enforcement who we've seen in the last week rush to deal with an attack at a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs, losing the life of a brave young police officer. And we saw law enforcement responding in San Bernardino, and one of the officers, as he was trying to move people out of harm's way, said, "Please go, I will take the bullet." So let's pull together on behalf of law enforcement, our security professionals, and do what will work to protect America. You heard what Tom said. We're making progress. Another good jobs report today. But we've got to do a lot more to make the economy stronger for everybody, not just those at the top. Tom understands that. He is doing a terrific job. And as I travel across the country talking and listening to people, I often hear about the initiatives he's undertaking. The Department of Labor is firmly supporting labor. And you know what? That is a nice change from what we had 8 years under George W. Bush. Tom is pushing hard for apprenticeships, people who are ready to work, and then connecting them with employers who are ready to hire. He has pushed hard to improve job opportunities for our veterans and for people with disabilities. He believes in a fair day's pay for a hard day's work. So he's been fighting to raise the minimum wage, to ensure fair pay for women, and to enforce the labor laws on the books so workers are not cheated by employers taking advantage of them. There's no greater advocate for working families than our Secretary of Labor, and I love the fact that he launched a campaign called Lead on Leave. That means let's help every American gain access to earned sick days and paid leave. Too many families, I know them, you know them, are faced with an impossible choice when they get sick or when their child gets sick, or their aging parent they're taking care of gets sick. If they stay home to take care of their family, they risk losing their paycheck. Sometimes they risk losing their job. We've got to make it easier for workers to take care of their own health, of their kids, of their parents, and be able to fulfill their responsibilities at work. That's why I am advocating for paid family leave. That's why I'm advocating for paid sick days. Now, a lot of unions have bargained for those rights, but the vast majority of American workers don't have them. Yet another reason why we need more unions representing more workers. So I am thrilled to have his endorsement. I really am going to be relying on his advice and expertise. And we were talking about the importance of getting jobs growing, but how the construction trades have really begun to come back. You guys got hit so hard by the Great Recession. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people cashed in their retirement savings. Some people lost their homes. Kids' college funds were wiped out. But even though you may have gotten knocked down, you didn't get knocked out. And you did everything you could to be able to stand up and keep moving forward. And because of your hard work, we have, under President Obama's leadership, seen 69 months straight of job growth. And America's businesses have created more than 13 million new jobs. A lot of people forget, and I got to tell you, the Republicans want you to forget how bad it was. They want us to have a collective case of amnesia. I saw President Obama shortly after he was elected in 2008. He called me, asked me to come to Chicago. I didn't know why. Turned out he wanted me to be Secretary of State. But before we got into that, he said it is so much worse than they told us. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month. 9 million Americans lost their jobs. 5 million lost their homes. $13 trillion in family wealth was wiped out. As bad as it was, it could have gotten worse. The auto industry was on a fast downward slide. The rest of the world was also in bad economic trouble. So we were in that big ditch that Tom mentioned. I don't think President Obama gets the credit he deserves for helping to dig us out of that big ditch and get us standing again. And you know, the auto industry is thriving again. All those jobs up and down that supply chain. We're producing more energy, including more clean energy than ever before, and Iowa is one of the leaders. And 18 million people have gotten health insurance, which has meant a lot to them and their families. But, you know, I'm not satisfied, and I don't think we should be, because I've been traveling around Iowa, and I've been listening to people, and they've told me about the stresses that they're under, how the cost of everything continues to go up, but wages haven't gone up. A lot of people are struggling with prescription drug costs, with child care costs. And trying to send a kid to college? Boy, some of you know how hard and expensive that is. So we've got to get jobs growing. Now, Tom mentioned my husband's 8 years. Those were good economic years. At the end of them, we had 23 million new jobs. Incomes went up for everybody, at the top, sure, but most importantly, the middle, working people, and more folks lifted out of poverty than at any time in recent history. And so, the Republicans don't like it when I say this, but it is a fact. The economy does better when we have a Democrat in the White House. So, you know, I'm not running for my husband's third term, and I'm not running for President Obama's third term. I'm running for my first term, but I'm going to do what works to create jobs and raise incomes. Now, last Sunday when I was in Boston with everybody, I announced one of the critical elements of my jobs plan, investing in infrastructure. We are in a sorry state. Our roads, our bridges are crumbling. Families endure blackouts because our electric grid fails in extreme weather. Beneath a lot of our cities, our pipeline structure, our water mains, sewer systems are a century or more old. Our airports are a mess. We don't have a single airport in the top 25 in the world. It's costing money. The delays, the problems. And Tom and I were just talking about our ports. Our ports are in terrible shape. You know, we don't want to lose business. You know, I was honored to be endorsed by the longshoremen the other day, and you know, they do a great job because a lot of the freight that comes into the United States comes by big container ships. And they're so far behind in modernization and operation, it costs more money. The ships stay offshore while you have to process everybody else. Our rail systems are getting overworked. I learned the other day that it takes nearly as long for a freight train to go across the city of Chicago as it takes for it to come from Los Angeles to Chicago. Because our infrastructure is old. It's broken down. You know, my image is it's held together by duct tape. And that has real-world consequences. Here in Iowa, farmers are paying a price for the freight rail congestion that slows shipments throughout the upper Midwest. That drives up prices, it hurts farmers, it makes us less competitive. So I have proposed a 5-year, $275 billion plan to strengthen infrastructure, create good-paying jobs, and build the future we deserve. Now, this not only creates good jobs, but it also strengthens our economy. And that, in turn, leads to more good jobs in the future. So we're going to make smart investments in ports and airports, waterways and roads, like Highway 20, not far from here. I don't know, if you were to count up all the hours you spent just sitting there or having problems getting there, it will cost real time and real money. So we're going to do everything possible to make us more competitive while we create more good-paying jobs. I also want to be sure we invest in high-tech infrastructure. We need to make sure every place in America has access to quality, affordable, high-speed internet. I don't care where you live, you ought to be able to access it. It's kind of like electricity. Back in the 1930s, we were electrifying cities, but nobody wanted to go out in rural areas because there wasn't as much money out there, weren't as many customers out there. So we had to create an electrification program from the federal government, the rural electric co-ops and other organizations that came in to fill the gap. You know, it took until the late 1960s to electrify all of America, but we did it. Can you imagine now not being able to get electricity if you lived in the continental United States? Well, I feel the same way about high-speed internet. I also want to create a new national infrastructure bank. Other countries have done this. We should as well. Now, I am pleased that finally, yesterday, the Congress passed the highway bill. This has been going on for years, right? And it's important that we finally got it done, but it's just a down payment. I mean, it's a lot of money, but nowhere near what we need to spend. So that was passed by the Congress. Then I want to layer this additional money, and we're still behind the curve about what we need to spend to get our infrastructure up and going. I also want to make sure we have a pipeline of workers. That's why I support apprenticeships. I proposed a new tax credit to encourage more high-quality apprenticeship programs. And while we're doing this, I will not let anyone undermine collective bargaining rights, prevailing wage standards, or project labor agreements. You know, the jobs we're talking about are tough jobs. They take training and skill. They take respect for worker safety. We can't let anybody mess with that. We can't let people be cutting corners and undermining worker safety. In the end, it it also ends up costing more. You do a shoddy job, it doesn't hold up. We need to make sure the construction trades remain that ladder into the middle class and that people can stay there. So there's a lot we can do together, but I need your help to be able to do any of this. I'm going to keep making the case for what we need to do to create new jobs and making sure that Americans get a raise. I'm the only candidate running who has said, I'm going to work to raise incomes, not taxes. I will not raise taxes on the middle class of America. This, for me, is a non-starter. You know, folks haven't recovered their incomes since the Great Recession. Most Americans haven't gotten a raise since my husband left office. So we got work to do. That's why I need your help in this upcoming caucus. How many of you have ever caucused before? Good, good. Well, I hope you will again. And I hope those of you who haven't will think about doing it. It's one of the most historic experiences you can have living here in Iowa. You all get to cast the first caucus votes on behalf of the candidate of your choice. Obviously, I hope that's me. Because I do want to fight for us. And I'll tell you why. You know, my grandfather was a factory worker. He came here as a young immigrant. And he went to work in the Scranton lace mills in Scranton, Pennsylvania. It was hard work. He did it to support his family, but he also did it because he believed that by working so hard here in America, he could give his kids a better life. And he did. He had 3 sons. They all went to college. Now, my father got out of college in the middle of the Great Depression, couldn't find a job, heard from somebody who heard from somebody that there might be a job in Chicago, so he hopped a freight train. I don't recommend that today, but a lot of people did it back then. Got himself to Chicago, got the job. That's one of the reasons I ended up being born there. And worked hard, and then went into the Navy, was a chief petty officer, and when he came out, he started a small business. And he believed with all of his heart in the basic bargain of America. If you work hard and you do your part, you ought to be able to get ahead and stay ahead. Kind of what I heard Tom describing from his upbringing in Buffalo. Now, my mother had a very different experience. She was abandoned and rejected by her parents, and she was sent to live with grandparents who didn't want her. And by the age of 14, she was out working as a housemaid. I didn't know any of this when I was a little girl. I just knew she was my mom, and she was a great mom. But as I got older and I learned about her life, I asked her, I said, how did you survive that? How did you keep going? She said, you know, along the way, people showed me kindness. That first grade teacher who made sure she had enough to eat because she'd come to school every day, and when it was time for lunch, she never did have anything to eat. Or even the woman whose house she went to work in who knew my mother wanted to go to high school. Made a deal with her. If you get up early, you do your chores, you can go to high school. And you come back after school and finish them. Sounds kind of harsh today, thinking about a 14-year-old kid, but for my mom, it was a gift. She too believed with all her heart in the promise of this country. So that's how I was raised. You know, my husband and I have had so many blessings and opportunities because of America. Now we have this amazing, wonderful grandchild. And it's pretty amazing being in the Grandparents Club, for those of you those of you who are fellow club members, you know, all the joy and none of the responsibility. It's great. But you know, Bill and I have spent just countless hours looking at her, taking care of her, talking about her, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure, along with her parents, that she has every opportunity in life to fulfill her own potential. But that is not enough, folks. It really matters what kind of country she grows up in and what kind of world is out there waiting for her. I don't think it's good enough that the granddaughter of a former president can have every opportunity. I want the granddaughters of factory workers and the grandsons of truck drivers to have exactly the same opportunity in America. That's the promise, and we've got to fight as hard as we can to make sure